Hello, Happy New Year, and welcome to the Intentional Brief, your weekly video update on the one big thing in cybersecurity for middle market companies, their investors, and executive teams. I'm your host, Shay Colson, managing partner at Intentional Cybersecurity, and you can find us online at intentionalcyber.com. Today is Monday, January 5th, 2026, and it's time to get back to work, and also in some places time for the kids to get back to school, which is probably just as exciting, if not more so. While I try not to do traditional predictions shows, I do think in today's episode it's worth covering three things that I think you should consider working on in 2026. And I would also love to hear in the comment section below what other things are getting your attention this year. But for me, there's really three strategic imperatives for cyber pros in 2026. Number one, it's 2026. You need an AI strategy. Number two, in an era of volatility, know thyself. And number three, make a friend or two or three. We'll break each of these down, give you some advice, and then wrap it up with a little bit of what else we should look forward to in the year more broadly. But let's start with, yes, in 2026, you need an AI strategy. I get it that on this show, we talk a lot about AI. But let me be clear, by encouraging you to have an AI strategy, that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to adopt AI everywhere, no matter what. Quite the opposite. In fact, I think what you have to do is figure out what AI can do for your business, for your organization, in terms of both creating and delivering value, but also creating risk, and then have a plan for moving forward and managing that. If you're in knowledge work or if you have critical IT needs for your business, it's going to be very difficult to avoid AI in 2026. This is not something that you can just wait and see. It's not a fad in the sense that it is going to come into your enterprise through all sorts of strange, interesting, and novel ways, through vendors, through partners, through employees, and other ways in 2026. What you need to do is figure out where the lines are for you in terms of data, acceptable use, access controls, and other strategic traditional IT dynamics. If you lived through the rise of shadow IT in the SaaS era, in the early years, that introduced sprawl even for small enterprises, much less mid and large market companies, then you probably have at least some idea of what this change might herald. But if you didn't live through that, then I don't know if you have a frame for just how massive this shift is going to be. The problem, of course, is that we don't know what direction it will shift in or when, but we do know that this shift will happen faster than our own businesses can adapt or adjust. So figuring out these strategic elements ahead of time is critical. They simply can't be done after the fact, because then it will be too late from a deployment perspective. That also leads us nicely into my second big 2026 effort, which is, in an era of volatility, know thyself. We are just days into this new year, and we're already getting a sense of how crazy or volatile things might be. The U.S. invading Venezuela is just the start of this. Then there's continued concern, of course, around both Russia, China, with Ukraine and Taiwan. And this doesn't account for ransomware actors, other nation state cyber efforts, or the AI-driven rate of change that we just talked about. Now, you and I both know that we can't individually do much about these macro dynamics influencing the trends one way or another. But what we can do is invest in a clear understanding and intentional management of the things that are within our control. I think 2026 is going to be a great year to double down on understanding just exactly what and how your business runs, and ensuring that those critical components, especially the IT and technology ones, are being run resiliently. This should definitely include some additional exploration of the softer components of your business, like people and their identities, software, and even the packages underneath the software that runs. And then you can create some significant downstream efficiencies by also understanding what's not in your environment, because the news of breaches, 0 days, new issues, and other things will continue in 2026. We don't see that slowing at all. And oftentimes, knowing what doesn't affect you is just as valuable as knowing what does. The third strategic imperative for the year: make a friend or two or three. This is really something that I think is going to be extremely valuable, but takes upfront effort as well. Wired had a piece just at the end of the year on the 31st of December, headlined, quote, "Fears mount that U.S. federal cybersecurity is stagnating or worse," unquote, with a subhead that read, "Government staffing cuts and instability, including this year's prolonged shutdown, could be hindering U.S. digital defenses and creating vulnerabilities." Obviously, I think they're softening the language there. Definitely, this is creating vulnerabilities and hindering U.S. digital defenses. We also heard mention from President Trump on Saturday morning about Cyber Command's certain capabilities that were used in Venezuela against the power grid. But Wire doesn't seem to think, and I don't either, that we should bank on those certain capabilities coming to our aid anytime soon. Instead, I think we'll need to continue to build our own networks, relationships, and connections to get that sort of help in our moments of need or concern. In a world where I think synthetic relationships continue to grow in terms of both volume and depth, the good old-fashioned phone a friend approach is something that we need to put some energy into collectively building and maintaining this year. So whether you're seeing something weird in your environment, or you need a sanity check on a particular decision, or you're considering one vendor over another, the perspective of a trusted peer can be invaluable. And the other thing about these relationships is that they take time and effort and cultivation, and a sense of giving and taking, building that dynamic before you can really leverage it in your moment of need. So start putting that time in now, and that way when you need to make that call, it is answered. If you get that call from someone else, I would suggest that you take it. Offer your experience, your input, your perspective. Reach out and check in with folks. See how they are, see what's on their minds, see what's on their radar. These things all matter for each of us, and they can really make a difference, but they're easy to overlook and take for granted. So I would encourage you as a third effort to invest in that network. From a fundraising perspective, we'll have some updated numbers next week as the 2026 announcements trickle in over the course of this first business week of the year. But we've already seen, however, some interesting pieces prognosticating about 2026 in the private equity world, including a Sunday piece in the Wall Street Journal that reads, quote, "Private equity's consolidation hopes may need to wait past 2026, unquote, asserting that underperforming buyout shops need to be pruned, but strategic M&A remains a tough proposition for all but the best performers." That might be a tall order, waiting an additional year or more in an environment that's already volatile, carries a lot of risk, and sees investors looking increasingly for returns or at least liquidity. So we will see how that plays out. A reminder that you can find back issues and written transcripts of these videos at intentionalcyber.com. You can find all the links we talked about in the comments section below. Please let me know what you're working on for 2026, and we will see you next week for another edition of the Intentional Brief.